Hey everyone. It's been a month. If you remember last time, I said let's take a month and work as hard as I can on pathfinding and see if I can actually figure this out. To the point of fear, because if I can't figure it out, I would have to consider other options like a turn-based game or something along those lines. So overall, a lot of progress and success. I wouldn't say it's done, but I would say it's maybe solved. There are. I'll go over the last concerns, but anyway, let me show you what I've got. Before looking at the app run, let me just walk through some of the use cases to give you an example of what I mean when I say pathfinding. One is if the units are stuck, like they are right here. They now, given certain conditions, will run their own pathfinding logic. So instead of relying on the leader or the squad to tell them where they'd like them to be, they get their own brain and catch up. And the reason they don't have their own brain from the get-go is just for performance. Trying to squeeze as many units on here as possible, and if they were each running pathfinding, it was just, at least in the beta build, way too laggy. Anyway, so it should be rare that they actually hit an object because the nav mesh has padding. This is a hard-coded example, but in the cases they do, they will hopefully be able to find their way back. Another example is if the leader wants them to be off of a cliff, which is what the blue dots are. All my maps have a ton of edges, so I had to make, the user can click anywhere and it should be handled gracefully. So basically what happens here is if the dot is invalid, and just saying if the dot is invalid was actually quite a bit of work because I basically store polygon paths of the whole map of what's invalid and what's not and do a contains point. If it's invalid, walk towards it still, unless you hit a physics boundary. And if you hit a physics boundary, then start using steering behaviors to stay around your squad and around your leader, and move. The point will come back as a force if it becomes valid. And then if the leader stops moving while you have an invalid point, if you're close enough to the leader, just stop. So there's all of these like ifs, if. So I had to really clean up how state is managed. Are you following? Are you blocked? Are you catching up? To isolate the code logic and isolate performance issues. For just so that it gets kind of out of control and it's hard to keep it all in your brain at the same time. But a lot of that has been done. The whole state machine was rewritten and I went through it. Because everything you've seen up to now is like proof of concept. Half of it's been me learning, not like a foundation to build a game off of. Here's a cooler one. I'll show you repositioning in an actual demo, but I came up with a cool concept to allow you to rotate units while moving. Down here we have, this is what the nav mesh looks like and what my debugging looks like. In particular, what you're looking at here, you see, so the green is the nav mesh buffer. So depending on the unit width, there's a different buffer, so that's what you angle around the turns at. And the red are spots that the pathfinding code could not find a path to for some reason, because of a bad graph or because of it, so. What happens with the pathfinding behind the scenes is it takes a physics object and strokes it to put the buffer on. So this triangle here, this is the buffer for it. And there's no need for, so when you have a sharp angle, it's going to produce a sharper buffer. And if you have a gradual angle like up here, the buffer looks right. So I had to start. As of now, most of this graph is green. There are still some reds that I'm waiting to the final release of iOS 9 to even before playing with it anymore. But I was able to just kind of move the dots and make different triangles of the actual physics bodies to kind of solve the majority of these issues. But it's something that seems so trivial and should work out of the box, but 2 days of work just to write the debugging tools and actually fix the problem. What else we got? We have all of these triangles, the actual outline of the map, is now I'm using Physics Editor, which is a program that you can download, and basically you draw triangles and it'll export them to a plist file. And then I wrote a custom importer into my code, so that my code then takes it and converts it into pathfinding objects. That has solved, like I used to have to either do it by hand or open Photoshop and get the coordinates and then transfer the coordinates by hand. Now I just drag and drop triangles and it'll make future maps much, much easier to get pathfinding working on. I know you guys keep seeing this first map, but these tools will apply to every map. Another example of something solved is this unit was here and they walked through up to here and they bumped a bunch of these guys out of position. So normally people are idle when they're not moving, to save resources, and also because I can do additional things like make them a physics object when they're idle. But if they get bumped out of position, they should check and walk back into position eventually. They shouldn't just be left out of position. So that was an edge case solved. So that gives you an example. And in the actual blog post, I did a bunch of the edge cases. Just a lot of work. But a couple things that like were huge overhauls and are good going forward. One is Gameplay Kit that came out with iOS 9. Steering behaviors are instead of saying move to point, you give different goals: reach destination, reach speed, avoid agent, stick with friends. Like these are goals, and each one will apply a force on the object to reach the destination. So that way, like in this example, the destination might be here, he can avoid him. I'm still balancing what is possible with the resources. You know, on older devices, it might be just that there isn't much physics or much obstacle avoidance, and on newer, it might just look a lot more graceful. But the key is I can scale it up and down now. I have the ability to say avoid all obstacles. So that Gameplay Kit was huge. Let's look at our build right now and run it. It's going to look much the same. Actually, I have all these debug flags on that I can show you a couple of them. This one is the actual physics objects. And if we turn on my keyboard here, the whole nav mesh, it'll give you an idea of how the connections work. So every kind of inner point that's connected is a node, and that's, you know, targets for how they can walk and the connections between nodes. So we got all the pathfinding tools for them. We also have, let's turn those off. Squad positions was used to figure out. So right now, the squad talks to the leader, and so the leader leads and the units follow, and the squad kind of gives the orders. This kind of gives you where the squad is saying everyone should be. Super laggy as I'm recording this, but you get the idea. It draws dots for where everyone should be. That's odd that that's, I will look at that. Another huge change is the anchor point system. So iOS 9 came out with the camera. So I had to convert the off-screen heraldry anchor points to use the new camera. The plus is like that system is now fully ready to launch. There are no more bugs with anchor points. You can see the dots that'll appear, and then the blue line is the edge of the screen. So when you zoom in, watch the yellow shield to the left. Once it goes off screen, it'll lock to an anchor point. And then as you pan up, so everything, and so this is to prevent overlapping. You should always be able to touch a unit. You can watch they both gracefully move across the points, and then when you come back into view, they come back nicely Also, if you notice the settings icon in the top left, it will, the anchor will skip. You know, if it's in view, there's like a little edge case there where it could be in view and still on top, but for the most part, the anchor will try to avoid anything else in that position. This was important too because down at the bottom, you know, where this head is, I can put additional abilities or status effects, any, you know, damage over time, anything like that. And the shields will skip those spots so that they'll always be touchable and always be in view. So that was a big change. Then we have let me run this again. So I'll just walk these guys somewhere while you can get the gist of how they move. And it looks different with physics without, like the final code. Like the way you reform, will I make it a delay where there'll be a penalty if you turn more than an angle? All of that is like subject to gameplay, but the point is it's all config now. It's all flexible. If you notice, so if I click on someone and move them, first their active move is highlighted. Let me move them over here. Go back to someone else, move them. Then tap back on the original unit. Their move is highlighted. I had that kind of working in the last update, but what's important about this update is it's a full rewrite of the icons in the bottom right. They are now, it's a full entity component system that updates every frame. Each icon is basically its own component. And the reason for that is because, let's say you hit attack on one unit, and then it's going to show the range of everything. And every frame, as things are moving, it needs to check, are you in range, are you in range, and update the target's icon if it's in range each frame. So basically, these things needed to be much more flexible. And I'm going to meet someone at 5 at World of Beer. The code and logic for those icons just needed to be much more flexible. So if let's take a look at, I'm going to tap the yellow unit and hit move, and then I'm going to hold my finger down, and you see the dots. So this is a way for me to rotate the target position, and all I'm doing is moving my finger in a circle on the screen. So I'm holding to tap, and then when I let go, they'll move there. Now if I just do a single tap, it doesn't preview the move. It's just going across the screen anywhere. But the hold and move will put them in the desired position. So what's key there though is when you hit the move icon, it needs to be, now the hold to tap gesture recognizer is activated. So normally if you just hold the screen, nothing should happen. But if there's an active move, it should then show the move preview. So that's another example of why these icons needed to be much more flexible and have their own code base. What else do we got? Because all of this was so complex, I just started using GitHub issues to track. All of these are closed issues with my Pathfinding branch. You can just see there's a lot of things that you wouldn't think, like reform faces destination and not first point in path. The problem with that was if the yellow guy is going to move up here, he first has to walk here, so the reform should face there and it should not face the final destination. Little things, like in that example, that's, you know, a 30-minute fix. That's not a horrible bug, but there's just so many like that. And then I also have just ongoing performance metrics of what works for me and what not. The big one is, so if I walk the yellow people through the red, if I change the Z position each frame so that they look isometric, you know, it looks like there's some depth, that'll start to cause issues when sprites overlap. Second, if there's a ton of physics context, like circles bounce, the frame rate just drops to 30. Other people are having, it got to the point where I have to stop and wait till the final build is out because it could be a beta issue. I'm not sure. Other people in the forums are having it. Anyway, this was like probably 2,500 new lines of solid pathfinding code that I can build off of and get to work. I'm happy enough that I'm like, okay, let's go back. If you remember 2 months ago, I had menus working in sound and you could navigate through the game. I'm going to go back to that and adding basic combat and skip pathfinding for a while. It's good enough now that I'm, we can make something playable and get to an alpha. Anyway, that's it for now, and let's I'll probably do another month because these chunks it's nice to get these focused large chunks of coding in. All right, see you next time. Thanks.